listening to the Radio and Audio Media Podcast, where we showcase stories and scholarship about emerging trends, historical context, and the diverse cultures of radio and audio media. I'm your host, Jason Lee Guthrie, Assistant Professor at Clayton State University. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Anne MacLennan and Tony DeMars, co-editors of the Journal of Radio and Audio Media, or JRAM. I began by asking Anne about her time as editor.
I'd love to have you talk a little bit about just your experience as editor of the journal. How long have you been the editor, and how have you seen it develop under your editorship over time?
I edited the journal for 5 years, and I'm co-editing this year with our new editor, Tony DeMars. So I've done 10 issues because we have 2 issues a year, and we've done a lot of very interesting themes and thematic issues. I think that the journal is doing well. We're getting more downloads. It's much more international than it was a few years ago. We get material about podcasts and audio and music streaming and radio and intersections with gender and race and technology.
What are some of the things that the journal is historically known for publishing, and how is that something that's changed and evolved?
I think historically, this has been a very solid journal for the radio community. Frank Trobra started the journal, and it's the journal where radio and audio intersect. It intersects with research on a lot of different levels. So a lot of research is empirically founded, if you will, and American research tends to be quantitative in a lot of cases. And there's lots of places to publish that kind of research. But if you were to publish something that was radio history, you might get pushback in other places because the historians might not see it as history and the other journals might not see it as empirical enough. And the Journal of Radio and Audio Media is comfortable with this kind of change in terms of approach and methodological foundations for your research. So you have quite a wide range of research. The other thing that's changing, we had a good issue just before I started on podcasting. And so that's been very good. And we've collaborated with Josh Shepard and other members of the Radio Preservation Task Force. The other kind of area that the journal ventures into that's important is digital storytelling. And you'll see at a lot of universities, they've expanded to, and sometimes changed the name to digital storytelling. So digital narratives are very important in terms of audio.
Next, I talked to Tony about the transition and his vision for the future.
You began in January of 2022 as the co-editor of the journal. Tell us a little bit about what the journal publishes and what background you bring that brings that expertise to being an editor.
For the journal itself, it started off as the Journal of Radio Studies, and it was fairly limited in that way. So I think it was beneficial that we updated that to the Journal of Radio and Audio Media. And if you look at that, especially in these recent years, it is getting a lot of podcasting-based research. And if you look at the biggest number of views in the recent years, that goes toward a lot of the podcasting things. So I do think we've gone in podcasting directions and in some ways a little bit more of that audio media kind of thing. For me personally, I had a background in radio, and so I had worked full-time in radio for 10 years before I got into university teaching. I'd done some research on radio through the years and music research, and did one article way back in the journal. Beyond that, I've been involved with the level of creative work, but also the level of research. And so I think that's what I bring to the journal, is that I've got the perspective of the industry, and then I've also been involved in that level of research.
This is a little bit unique as academic journals go, because there is a really strong industry component to the research that JRAM is looking for and that JRAM publishes. So to a potential author out there that is publishing work or maybe has a similar background as yourself coming from the industry, what are the kinds of things that JRAM is looking to publish?
Well, generally, if people will think about what the journal is, we do want things that are radio related, audio related. It has a pretty good range of what could be submitted. And so ultimately, articles on just about any topic related to radio or audio media could be published in the journal. Definitely some industry related things, but there are some good theoretical things that people could do. I'd really like to see more historical things, especially as we got to the 100-year anniversary of radio. I'd like to see some highlights of people that have made important contributions through the years. Other historical development things can be useful, I think, for the journal.
How about talking about the process of submitting to the journal and what reviewers can expect?
I think people should notice probably within our journal that we do have symposium issues. And so the edition coming out from May 2022 is a symposium on colonial radio and the issue of colonialism era and the societies that were the colonized areas. And so some good articles there in a symposium issue. And then we have another symposium issue coming up called Multilingual, Multicultural Migrant in Diasporic Radio. The call is out for that with an August 1st, 2022 deadline. We're talking about a symposium on the BBC's 100th anniversary, and we're talking about the one on Black radio with a focus on Urban One founder Kathy Hughes. So within that, people should recognize that we do have those symposium issues, but in general, we're always looking for submissions from people about anything related to radio and audio media with no deadline for that. The symposium issues will always have a call and a specific deadline. So right now, if somebody's working on something that fits within the framework of the journal, look at our submission process on the journal and submit the article to us.
To wrap up, could you share with us a little bit about your vision for the future of the journal and what you're hoping to achieve with your tenure as editor?
Well, the thing about the journal that I enjoy being able to step into is the fact that the previous editors have done such a great job of building where we are, and having the impact she's had in these recent years has gotten us where we have a level of recognition of the quality of our journal. We're very competitive now as a journal. We're international. We're getting a lot of international submissions, probably about 20 different countries that we've gotten articles from. And so when I look at my vision of the journal, I don't have to imagine some things that we're going to do differently because we're doing things so well right now with the way the journal has operated in these recent years. I would say probably at one level, I want to think about a little bit more of that audio media type of research, because I do think that some analysis of sound design and film could be some important research that fits within audio. Something like music analysis types of things. Radio formats are important, but sometimes a breakdown of some things that help us to appreciate creations like music and some research within that. So those are a couple of the things that I've thought about. Definitely we want to keep having that diversity of voices in terms of what we publish about and who we publish, and that can be national and international. So I would say in the general sense, those are some of the ideas I've had about submissions, maybe within some of those areas.
This has been the Radio and Audio Media Podcast. I'm your host and producer, Jason Lee Guthrie, Assistant Professor at Clayton State University. I've been speaking today with Ann MacLennan and Tony DeMars, co-editors of the Journal of Radio and Audio Media.